So I'm going to start with first, thanks everybody for coming, and thanks for attending by phone, Chrissy, because it's too far to walk over to be in the room. And so I'm gonna go over first the kind of calendar of events of what we're going to work through. Everybody knows we've started a couple years ago this thing called the State of the Firm, and we started it with here's what happened last year. And as we've grown a little bit, we've said, here's what happened last year, here's some things we're thinking about, here's some things that we see kind of coming in the future. This year, we're going to do a lot of training around that. We've also added a shareholder meeting to that lineup of events. We're going to do some more training with Salesforce, and we're also going to have some strategic planning time. During that, we're going to have an outside facilitator come in. We've been able to get some help from Schwab and Fidelity in the past to have some of these strategic planning sessions to think about where we're going over the next 3 years, 5 years. And it's good to kind of take a step back and have an outside facilitator go through that. So especially with all the changes that happened in 2018, particularly in the fourth quarter, we've got some reorganization that we want to talk about and some not really new direction, but just kind of enhanced focus on the current direction. I think it's time for us to take a look again at where we want to be over 3 or 5 years. For right now, we're still kind of executing on the strategic plan that we did about 18 months ago when we were off-site and started looking at where we wanted to be over the next 3 to 5 years, which was continued focus on the private client business and continuing to grow kind of geographically across the footprint that we're in today, kind of the Midwest and Florida. So we're going to have this meeting on March 15th, but what we thought we would do as well, hey Chris, is that we wanted to update the org chart, right? Because we've divested with the institutional business and we've added LJPR, and so we've got a lot of new people we have to put on the chart. So we've been working on updating the org chart and kind of communicating the restructuring, most notably that institutional isn't on the org chart anymore, so kind of updating and refreshing that. And we want to get that in everybody's hands around the same time that everybody's going through year-end reviews, because they've got a chance to talk with their supervisors and have kind of direct communication. So we thought it'd be good if we could get that out for everybody as well as they go through all of those kind of conversations. We, in the past, have had a group called the Communications Group. And the idea behind the communications team, strategy and communications team, really was to begin to share in a little more depth some of the strategic decisions that we were making, so that as we wanted to communicate the message across the firm, we had more people, kind of like allies, that could help us as we started going through some of these conversations. If there was a water cooler conversation, there'd be 1 or 2 other people that had heard more insight, and so they'd be able to help us consistently deliver that message. As we grow with the number of people and the number and the geography, as far as 3 states now to work through, it gets a little bit more complicated. And so we're going to repurpose that call it kind of the leadership group. All of you are part of that group, and essentially you're part of that group because you're managing other people. So most of you have direct reports or will have direct reports through the next 30 to 45 days as we roll some of these changes out. And so I wanted to share with you kind of what we were thinking strategically for the next 12 months, so that as we went through reviews and as we went through State of the Firm, you guys would have a chance to kind of in an informal session ask questions, get up to speed, give me feedback, so that when we then roll it out to the whole firm, you guys will be up to speed. And then when we go to the State of the Firm after we've gone through reviews, anything that comes through in the review process or informal process, maybe we'll have 2 or 3 most often asked questions. I'll make sure I address those in the State of the Firm. So this is a kind of an informal update of what's to come. Today is 1/31. On 2/13 or February 13, we're going to update what I'm going to talk about today to the whole firm, so everyone will hear it for the first time. Then we'll go through the reviews over the last couple of weeks of February, and then we'll have State of the Firm on the 15th. So for the next couple of weeks, you've got a chance to give me any feedback you want to change it before we go to the rest of the firm. After that, it'll be out there. And then you got a chance to give me feedback of these are things that nobody understood, or you said all these things and you need to go over this more. So in addition to getting to come to this early, you have a responsibility to give me feedback on things that you hear that you think the rest of the firm would like to hear more information on. So what we're going to cover today is our objectives for 2019. Most of you know that we converted our, John knows painfully well, we converted our tax year to 12/31 year end. So we really have just an 11-month year this year, right? So we ended our last kind of accounting year as of today, right? 1/31 today. And our next year, this year, will actually be an 11-month year. Hey, Annie. 11-month year. And we'll close our tax books and our accounting books as of 12/31. And then from here on out, we'll always be on a calendar year and accounting year being both the same. So when I talk about our objectives for 2019, it really is 2019. We no longer have fiscal years and calendar years. Calendar year equals fiscal year. And everything will be what we're hoping to accomplish over the next 11 months. As we grow, both the number of people and geographies, it's harder to plan strategically and make sure everybody's aligned on the same page. And so a couple of concepts that I think are really important. One is that if we have too many objectives, it's difficult to accomplish all of them, right? So rather than try to say there's 20 things that we all would like to do, if we went around this room, we could come up with 20 really good things to do, probably more, but we wouldn't be able to accomplish all of those things. And so I think we have a much better chance of going deeper with a smaller list of objectives than a larger list of objectives. And so what I wanted to do was list out what are the firm's most important objectives, and I think that number ought to be 3 to 5. And then everybody who manages people or segments or departments can then develop and kind of cascade down and create their objectives tied to the firm objectives. So what we're going to cover today, what I'm going to cover on the 13th, what I'll cover again on March 15th, is going to be what are the firm's most important 3 to 5 objectives. And then John will work on finances objectives, and Heather will work on wealth planning's objectives, and they will be tied to the firm objectives. As we get bigger, we are putting more infrastructure in and more management in. We've got Al here now that can essentially manage people without having to deal with clients, at least yet. I'm sure we'll put him on some clients before long. But we've got more infrastructure to help us manage the business, but we need to make sure that we let the managers kind of run their departments. But in order for them to run their departments, they have to know where the firm is going. And so this is our kind of first attempt to lay out. These are the 3 to 5 biggest key objectives for the firm. And then through the first quarter, and you'll see in some of our goals, throughout the year, all of you in this room and on the phone will begin to cascade down to your direct reports on what your key objectives are tied to that long-term set of goals. So I'm going to go over that today. On the 13th, I'm going to go over that with the whole firm. I'm also going to go over the org chart. And we kind of debated this, the revised org chart. There's some promotions on there. There's a few people in this room that are actually going to get promoted. And so we've always kind of waited to do the promotions at the state of the firm. And so if we hand it out before then there's going to be some kind of lack of suspense. But we figured that since everybody was going to be meeting with their supervisors, since there's going to be a lot of communication around that, plus since the org chart is getting bigger and more complex, it was better to give it to people with time to think about it, time to be talking to their supervisors kind of right away, going through what all that means. And again, any feedback that we need to get from the team, we can get over the course of the last couple of weeks of February, and then we can address it when we're all together at State of the Firm. And again, we'll be all together for a couple of days, so it gives us a chance to kind of get aligned pretty quickly and make sure everybody's on the same page. So today we'll go over the high-level objectives. 13th, we'll go over the high-level objectives for the whole firm. You guys will already be clued into all that, and we'll go over the org chart. And then on the we'll do on the 15th, we'll do State of the Firm, and then we'll do some more strategic objectives. So I think someone's on hold, right? There we are. Okay. Every time I hear that hold music, I think we have to change that. That could be the worst hold music of all time. So as we started thinking about the key objectives, I mentioned a couple times I think it should be 3 to 5. It's difficult to do. It seems like be simple in some ways, but there's just so many things that we all want to do, and that we all think are very important to do. Is that getting it narrowed down to your top 3 to 5 is really challenging. So we started with kind of a brainstorming session of all the things that could be done, and then trying to narrow it down. Admittedly, we have 5 this year, which I'm going to go over. Admittedly, we have 5, and maybe when I'm standing up here 3 years from now, we'll be down to 3. This is the first time through, so we kind of probably went a little bigger. If we're going to err on the side of having a few more. Maybe we'll continue to hone that and get even better at it as we continue to go. But for right now, we have 5. As I started thinking about what's most important, I come back to our purpose and our values. Our purpose, and when I say our purpose, all of you have heard this before. I know that there are people on the phone from LJPR that are new, that have seen it as part of the process, so they've gone through over 2019. One of the reasons we're doing the strategic planning session in March is so we can begin to include more people from Michigan and Florida, for that matter, into the. We shamed her into coming over. Christy has entered the building.
Became a legend.
To start to build more people in Michigan into the process, we didn't have time to do that essentially before now. They've only been with us for 31 days officially, even though it seems like we've been working with them for the last 6 months. And so the first time that we could get everybody together is going to be after March. So we'll relook at our purpose and our values. Could you go back to our purpose? Our purpose and our values. And make sure that they're consistent with the new kind of reconstituted team. But one of the things that makes me feel very excited about the LJPR merger is that their vision and values are very similar to our vision and values. We might choose to use a couple of different words, and when the leadership team gets together and we start debating it, maybe we'll change a few words here and there. But I think the philosophy will stay the same, and that's why we're so excited and think there's going to be such synergy as we put the organizations together. So our purpose has been and continues to be enriching lives. And when I say enriching lives, I mean clients and teammates. I hear consistently from, I shouldn't say everyone, but from many people within the organization that we all want to get paid, and we all need a paycheck and support families, and we're not doing this for free. It's not altruistic. But we all feel like we're doing it for a bigger purpose than just the paycheck. We do enjoy helping clients. Consistently, when you read what consumers wish they knew more about, it's financial education. Maybe not as deeply as we know it, or as Trevor and Annie know about defective trust, but certainly financial education is a key objective that most consumers would like to know more about. So our work makes a difference. We feel like we're helping people solve a very difficult part of their life. And that, I think, gives most of us in this room benefit. It gives us some psychic reward above just the monetary reward that all of us seek as we continue to grow our careers. I think we also feel very positive about enriching each other's lives. This is a special team that enjoys working together for the most part. I realize there are times when it doesn't always work that way, but for the most part, more often than not, all of us enjoy working together, and our teamwork is a competitive advantage. All of us being willing to subjugate our ego and work for the benefit of the client makes us a stronger team, a stronger organization, and that's an important part of why most of us come to work here, because this is a big industry. There's plenty of places that we could practice our craft. We could practice with different clients. We could practice with different people. But if you study our retention numbers, you realize that most people want to stay here because of the quality of the people they get to work with and the quality of clients they get to work with. And that's a big part of what drives our purpose. Our values, if you can switch there for a second. We have 7 values that, again, when we went through our strategic planning process, we've had maybe different versions of this at different times, but the strategic planning team came back with these as being the 7 that most consistently represent who we are and what's important to us. And the reason I think these are important to go over again is that's what drives a lot of our objectives, right? If we want to be a firm that is team-based, that's independent, that has a passion for what they're doing, that's going to drive a certain set of goals. If we wanted a team that was money-based, as an example, that might drive a different set of objectives. This is what's important to us. This is what I've been told regularly. This is what I hear from our leadership team that they believe is important to everybody in the firm. So earning trust is important to us because we're a planning-based firm, which you'll hear a little bit down from the value standpoint. But the only way I know how to deliver deep planning engagements is to earn clients' trust. And the only way I know how to learn trust is to build deep engagement for clients to believe that we're most interested in what they're trying to accomplish. And if we're willing to listen and build that deep relationship without being worrying about whether a certain transaction is going to happen today, tomorrow, or quickly, we can build deep relationships that we can then get them to tell us what they're trying to accomplish. And if we're good listeners, we can help them develop plans. We've got really smart planning people. Not Trevor anymore. It's Heather I get to look at. Trevor's on to something else. But we've got really smart planning people, but they can't do their job if we don't, as advisors, have an opportunity to build a trusting relationship so they're willing to share with us their information. So we can then deliver that to the planning team so that we, the advisors, the planning team, the asset management team, the finance team, the operations team, the client service team can all work together to deliver a better long-term client result. We're team-based. There's no superstars here. We try very hard not to have individualized compensation. We do recognize and understand that a lot of people want to know kind of what can I do to make my compensation go higher. And so I get that. And so we need to have individual goals for people so they can feel individually rewarded and also satisfied that they're doing their part. But we also have strong team-based goals and strong team-based sharing of incentives, both profitability and equity-wise. And the biggest strength that we have in the marketplace is that we're all willing to subjugate our egos and work for the benefit of the client. So we have multiple people on each client engagement. We have a planning team. We have an asset management team that works for the benefit of the client. We tell that story often to our clients, that there's a reason you should hire us. It's not because Annie is better than anybody else. It's because the team is better than anybody else. And you're hiring the team. You get to talk to Annie a lot, but you also get to talk to the rest of the team. And that makes us a better organization than the people down the street. We're independent. Independent doesn't mean that we're owned by an individual person. Independent means that we don't have a mixture of product and ownership, right? So there's not a product firm that's distributing through our advice. Our advice business is a good business. We're profitable, we're stable, we can afford to reinvest in technology and people. It's not as profitable as a product business. There's a lot of product businesses that have much higher margins. There's a lot of our competitors that have two margins. They have an advice margin and they have a product margin. That doesn't make them wrong, that just makes them different. We are very focused on a fiduciary model that our profitability is tied to being independent and giving our best advice. And we like that business, and that's where we intend to stay. I talk to a lot of people in the industry, and they'll tell me, why don't you come over and build products and kind of have that side, or why don't you join with a organization that has products so that you can distribute those products through your advice channel. And we believe that being independent is a competitive advantage. We have a passion for what we're doing. I think we're a proactive group. This is not a group that sits back and says, call me when you need me, and then I'll help you, right? This is a group that says, I haven't talked to you in 3 months, and I want to call you up and see what you're doing and figure out whether there's something I can do to help you. We're a competitive group, and I mean that in a positive way. We don't want to lose, and we don't want our clients to lose. And so if they're not asking us for advice, we're calling them and asking them what we can do to help them stay on track. Comprehensive planning is the basis of everything we do. You'll see that in some of our key objectives as we start to talk about it. We know, and I probably get to see it more than anybody, I talk to a lot of firms as we think about our growth plans. And most people say, well, we're thinking about getting into planning, or I think I'm going to go hire a planner and I'm going to start doing planning, or we do planning and they don't have a planning department. And again, I'm not trying to sound holier than thou or that we're better than they are. We're just different than they are. We are committed to planning. The majority of our clients go through that. And one of our key objectives you'll see will be trying to measure and increase that level of planning engagement going forward. Because we know that if clients go through the planning process, even though I know it's difficult to get all the information in, I know it's difficult to do the plans and get them all together and keep them current. I know it's difficult to deliver those all the time because clients are busy and they've got things they want. They feel like they don't have time to do all that stuff. But if they do take the time to do that, the client relationships are very sticky. They're very deep, and we're able to do some of our better work. When you look at the clients that have gone through deep, comprehensive plans, they're some of the best clients of the firm. So we want to continue to increase that. we invest in long-term relationships. We're not a transactional-based compensation firm. We're not looking to, investment banking models, a model that says I can make, multiple millions of dollars in one transaction and then I won't work with you for a long period of time. They're interested in just being engaged at that transaction. Doesn't make them bad, it just makes them different. What we would like to do is have lifetime relationships. And when you look at our retention rates, and you'll see that in some of our key objectives, that's a reason that's important to us, because none of us would be interested in working with someone one time and then not getting to see them again. I hear that, and Don's not here, but I heard it from Don when he joined us, that the bank wanted him to find relationships, turn them over to somebody else, and leave and not talk to them again. And he didn't want that. He wanted a long-term relationship. So our clients want long-term relationships, but our employees want long-term relationships as well. And then finally, a relentless pursuit of our full potential. This isn't meant to sound like nothing's ever good enough, or we're not satisfied, or it can always, or that we need more, or this is just a greedy pursuit. It's meant to be that we all think we have more potential. We all think that we can do more, that we can improve. Not do more because we need to make more, although that's certainly a benefit, but we feel like through technology, we can be more productive. Right? If we can take the time to stand back, make big capital investments, make big intellectual investments of Trevor and his team's time to think about how we organize it, we might be able to have more information at our fingertips than we otherwise would have, which makes John Marchand a better advisor. And so he wants to reach his full potential. He wants to help more clients. He wants to have more information available to him to help his clients, and he wants to be able to help people faster. So we don't ever want to stop with that. And as long as the organization keeps pushing towards reaching their full potential, I doubt we'll ever get there, right? There's never going to be a mountain that we get to the top and say we're done. But I don't think we're not a grateful group. I think we're grateful for what we have. I think we're a humble group. There's other things we could have put into our value system. But we do want to keep pushing to do better, not only for our clients, but also for the rest of our teammates. So the kind of 5 key areas that we want to focus the organization around. The first one is talent. We think we have a competitive advantage in our talent pool. And that's not to be arrogant. That's not to say that other people don't have talented people. But we hear it often. Leon has told me throughout the process as he goes through. Other people, Al has told me, he's the most recent person in the room. When he meets all the people in this room, he realizes that this room and this building, and the building in Troy and the building in Florida and building in Beechwood, when you meet all the people in the room, there's a lot of talent accumulated in this group. And we need to make sure I'll say me as being a business development person, I need to make sure that the clients understand how much talent is there. And we think that our talent is a competitive advantage. It's not to say that Goldman Sachs or Wells Fargo or Merrill Lynch doesn't have incredibly talented people, but we think these people, our people, are all aligned around common goals and can work together for the benefit of the client. So we want to continue to press that advantage. We want to invest more in people, and we want to give more tools to people so that we can continue to press that advantage. So the first thing we're going to do is recruit and hire a VP of HR. So there's a couple of sub-goals you hear. See, if I only have to be limited to 5 goals, I have to have a few sub-goals, right? So I can make it a little bit more. But how do you press that advantage? We're going to recruit a VP of HR. We have an outsourced team. That team has done a great job of kind of getting us standardized, getting some of our benefits up to speed, getting some of our offer letters standardized and what have you. But we want to be able to understand our workforce better than we do. We want to understand what motivates them and what we can do to have an even better workforce. We want to be able to understand what we can do to invest in education to be able to give them more tools. And we think it's time for us to invest in someone who can kind of coordinate all of those activities. So that's a search that is underway, and that's going to be one of our key objectives. We're going to measure the executive management team and the leadership team based on our ability to execute on these. So that's a pass-fail goal. Either we have someone, next year I'm standing here and there's an HR person sitting here somewhere contributing to this, or they're not. So that's something that we could measure and be accountable for. 100% of the team members will be on a talent development program. So what that means is we've talked about this before and we've done it to some degrees, but we haven't been able to really consistently hold ourselves accountable to it. So being able to say on a quarterly basis, do you understand the firm goals? Do you understand your segment's goals? And what can the firm be doing to help you achieve those goals and objectives? And that will be tied to the leadership team. So everybody in here will be tied some part of their compensation to how well are you doing managing your direct reports. So Trevor has a direct report in Sean. Is he meeting with Sean on a quarterly basis, talking to him about, do you understand the firm goals? Do you understand our segment's goals? And what can we be doing to help you pursue those goals? And we'll be, when we get the vice president of HR, we'll be putting in a kind of an HR, not another installation as big as Salesforce, but an HR management system so that we can track that and have some accountability to that. Create scalable compensation. Compensation is I'll say it's a challenge. It's not, it's just, it's time consuming. Maybe that's a better way to say it. And so we put a lot of effort into a couple years ago a managing advisor compensation schedule. And we kind of defined the three components of managing advisors. There's origination of new clients, there's strategic advice to clients, and there's tactical advice to clients. And we're able to essentially, with Trevor and Ryan's help, we're able to kind of go through and drive through Salesforce, through Tamarac, through our accounting system. We're able to drive through how a advisor like Bill, because he's not here, I'll pick on him, like how he would be scored through that managing advisor. And we're able to communicate to him, this is what we consider valuable, this is what we'd like you to spend your time doing, this is how we would grade you on that, this is how we would come up with compensation. And so Bill's been able to kind of work with that system. Jeff and Bill have been working for the last couple of years with here's the system we're moving to. So we're going to be able to have managing advisors on our established model, and we've kind of practiced it. Andy's been working with Don with it for the last couple of years. So they've seen it for the last couple of years. We're going to this year be able to put our established advisors on that. When we hire new advisors, like Matt Puller, because he's the newest one, there's a burn-in period where we carry their salary while they're kind of working their way up to that. But as they get to kind of a full load, we're going to be able to use that model to compensate our advisors. The good news is then that saves a lot of time for me or Al or Jeff to have to think through how should we compensate Bill, how should we compensate TJ throughout this year. Andy doesn't have to think about how she compensates Don. Servicing advisors are going to move to a quantitative model as well. And so that's a process that Al and Jeff are going to work on. We have some samples of that, and we have consistency across how we're compensating our servicing advisors. But the challenge is we have many clients who are, I'll just say, harder than others. Some clients that we bill $20,000 to are much more difficult than other clients that we bill $20,000 to. And so now that we have such a deep installation of Salesforce, we're going to be able to start to track how much activity different clients are having. And I don't think we're ever going to go to track everybody's hours and track it that way, but we're going to be able to see the level of activity, and maybe we'll rank them A, B, and C. And so A-level activities will be counted one way, and B-level activities will count another way. And there are certain clients that require almost no work. And it's not that that's a bad thing. It's that we have to try to be fair across all of those servicing advisors. And so we'll be building that. Having the benefit of having Al here, which is a benefit of the LJPR merger, will give us an opportunity to have time and mind share to work on that. And so that's also a pass-fail for 2019, is to get that set up. And then decentralized allocation to the closest manager. That's the next step. That's everybody else, right? So we have managing advisors, we have servicing advisors. So we have an asset management group. What John is working on, John Nemesek is working on, is getting a budget to Chris Crehan so that he's the closest manager in that group. So he can look at that group and say, I have a budget of $10 and I'm going to spend it how I choose to spend it. And so getting it away from having it be centralized to me or individual, kind of at the corporate level, to the manager in this room that is closest to it. So Chrissy will get a bucket of dollars to allocate amongst the client service team, and Chris Crehan will get a bucket of dollars to allocate to the asset management team, and Heather will get a bucket of dollars to allocate to the financial planning team. Now, we want to put a corporate overlay on that. So if Heather's budget is $10 and we have a bad year, Heather's budget might be $9 because we don't hit our full plan. If we had a really good year, Heather's budget might be $11, so she'll have a chance to allocate more because the firm has done well. So that falls on John Nemesek's list of to do. So John and I will be responsible for working on decentralizing that and delivering a bucket of dollars to you guys to think about how you can allocate across your group. Define the corporate overlay to share in success. So we have success. We can have success in a operating model. So we can have a really good year operating wise. And there can be some things, and it used to be, and we can pick on Tom Strong because he's not here, it used to be that we'd have a big life insurance year. And so our operating income year could be really good or not so good based on kind of how things happened with him. So that could influence just a good cash flow year, but it really didn't change our long-term value. We could have a big increase in our long-term value, right? An example of that would be LJPR, which closed in the last month of the year. It enhanced our long-term value, makes the firm more valuable, but it didn't really do anything to our cash flow because it's just 1 month from that standpoint. So we want to be able to say the firm had a good year, or both on an operating basis and also on a long-term value basis. And so when I say corporate overlay, being able to share some of that corporate success with the rest of the team. So that's what define the corporate overlay will be, and then educate on methods and benchmarks. Educate on methods is, as I've gone through and kind of prepared for this, prepared for the state of the firm, prepared for year-end reviews, I do hear feedback on compensation, not only current year compensation. People pretty much get that, right? Whatever the check is, but whether it's warrants, whether it's equity, people want to understand more how that is done. So education will be more communication on that. And we set a goal of 2 education meetings per year per person. One will be with me and one will be with direct managers to make sure that everybody understands not only my philosophy, but also how your manager's philosophy and including that. Because I take, as the firm gets bigger, people in geography, I take a lot more feedback from other people, Trevor or Jeff or Chris, on this is what you should do when you consider them participating in the equity appreciation or long-term value appreciation. And so it's important that you have that relationship with your manager, and you also have my vision of how I think we want to use that part of our compensation structure. And then the third thing is recruit 3 new diverse hires. We've talked in our executive committee meeting all year about diversity. We believe that we would like a more diverse marketplace, a more diverse employee base. We also understand that finding a 45-year-old minority advisor is challenging. Just being frank, there's a lot of talk about it in the marketplace. Like I read about it all the time. Everybody says it's a good idea, and then I start to look at people, and nobody does it. Right? I mean, our diversity of male versus female is reasonably good compared to the industry. Actually, very good compared to the industry, and reasonably good compared to the world. Our diversity for non-male, female, minorities, Hispanics, African Americans, sexual orientation is not very good, right? And this is not a marketplace that lends itself to finding a lot of incredibly diverse candidates. That's an admission that it will be difficult. That is not an admission of defeat. That is not something that says that we can't do that. So we're going to have to think differently. It's not impossible. It just means it has to be an objective that has its own line item and something that we say is important. One of our thoughts is that finding a 45-year-old diverse candidate may be much more difficult. Maybe we should start younger. Maybe we should find younger candidates that maybe didn't have all the reasons they didn't go into this industry and train them. We've got some incredibly talented Annie, Chrissy, and Heather who all started right out of college and have trained and are key executive leaders in the organization. So maybe we should follow that path again and try to increase our diversity that way. So I'm not saying I have the answer to it, but I want it to be known that we think it's an important thing, and that is also a pass-fail. So we'll have 3 new diverse candidates, diverse hires somewhere in the organization throughout the year, or we will have failed. And that will tie to our executive committee compensation. So the question is, what's the history, for anybody on the phone, what's the reasoning for 3 diversity hires? So there's nothing magic about 3. You're going to see that we want to hire 4 new advisors. And so when we start to think about how many people we can hire and what's the right spend for our budget, 7 is the right number in total. 4 of those advisors, some could be diversity candidates, so it may not be 7 in total, but 4 and 3, the reason behind 3 is because 4 plus 3, 7 is about all we can afford from a go-forward basis. So that's the answer behind 3. The answer behind diversity is that we think diversity of thought makes us a stronger firm, makes us more capable of relating to end clients. So if the end clients are increasingly diverse, then we need our organization to be increasingly diverse. And we talk a lot about, everybody says you just want the best available candidate for every position, and that's what we want. But we also believe that we want the best available candidate and we want a diverse marketplace. So we want to challenge ourselves to look in different places. Maybe if we want to have a minority African American advisor, maybe we need to recruit at a different school. Maybe Miami, Ohio, where Kristen and Dave and others is not necessarily a place. Jerry, Lygene, we're going to find that. And so maybe we need to go to Cleveland State. And we just don't want to settle for another year where we say this is important to us and we don't set a target. So we debated where we would say, well, maybe we wouldn't hire another non-diverse candidate until we hired a diverse candidate. We felt like that could harm the organization because we have certain needs for talent, and sometimes we have to take the talent that's in front of us. And that's what got us thinking about hiring a younger talent force, because the decisions that people made 20 years ago, 45-year-olds made 20 years ago, we can't really change. We can potentially change and educate around people who are still making those decisions as to whether or not they want to go into this industry or not. Sure. All right, anything else on talent? So 2 is scale. So utilize our scale to provide benefits to our 3 constituencies. Many of you have heard me talk about clients, shareholders, and our team, our employees. And I vision them as a triangle. And you really can't push on any of them too far, right? You can't get any of them out of alignment. If you're unfair to your employees and you give too much to clients and shareholders, then your employees will leave. If you're unfair to your clients and you give too much to employees and shareholders, then your clients will leave. And if you don't feed your shareholder base, then they'll exit and you won't have a business that you can continue to reinvest in new technologies with. And so I think we have to constantly be thinking about keeping all 3 of those in balance. We have intentionally and strategically embarked on building scale. We do believe that scale is not only important, it's critical, that if we don't have scale, we won't be able to continue to make investments in technology. We won't be able to continue to make investments in people. We won't be able to make investments that make the current people more productive so they can handle more clients, so that as fee pressure comes to our industry, it's already here and it continues to come, we can fight that fee pressure by spreading it over a bigger base. So we have a compliance department. If we spread that compliance expense over a bigger base, then we don't have to raise our prices because our compliance costs are going up. There's no client that I've ever met that's willing to pay more because our compliance costs are going up. They just say that's part of the deal. You have to figure that out. And the only way we think we can figure that out is to get scale so that we can make investments in technology and productivity enhancing efforts so that our advisors can do more with less, and so that we can spread things like compliance and finance and asset management over a bigger base. So scale is just not something we think is a good idea. It's something we think is critical to our strategic survival long term. There is, in my opinion, lots of evidence, and I say this because I spent a lot of time thinking about it. I don't know how much of you see this or read about this, but there are a number of large national and regional firms that are exceeding $100 million of revenue. Those firms are starting to press that advantage. They're starting to lock people out of other distribution opportunities, things like SAN, the Schwab Advisor Network, and WAS and TD's program. E-Trade came out last week and said they're going to award their slots just to 1 or 2 of the largest firms. So their biggest customers are going to take those slots and keep everybody else out of them. So these firms that have 50 different offices, so E-Trade has decided instead of having one Sequoia in Akron, Ohio, and another firm in Chicago and another firm in St. Louis, we're just going to hire one firm like Mariner or one firm like Creative Planning that are over 100 million that have offices in all 3 of those cities, and we're going to just have one slot for that type of firm. So that's an example of where scale is starting to be used as an advantage by some of these bigger national firms. Certainly access to capital is another place where they have strategic benefits. Relationships with custodians for pricing, being able to scale across that. We think there's going to continue to be more of that, and for us to survive, we need to be one of those. We don't have to be the biggest one. We don't even have to be as big as those players, but we do have to be, some of the biggest 100 firms, let's say. And don't quote me on the 100, but staying in the top 5 to 10% of the industry will give us benefits that will allow us to continue to press the advantage on a go-forward basis. So how we're going to do that is increase our revenue per employee from where it is today to 280,000, 300,000, 320, and 350 over quarterly. Again, these are meant to be numeric goals, so everybody understands what we're trying to accomplish, and they're pass-fail, right? If we don't do it, then we fail, and the executive team is going to suffer the consequences associated with that. To give everybody confidence, we are at 280 today, so the first quarter is kind of in the bag, so we know that. Really what that is all about is as we continue to add revenue, we want to make sure that we're scaling the business vertically and that we're not just adding people every time we add another couple $100,000 worth of revenue. It's not to say that we're not going to add new people. We are going to add new people. Our formula, just so everybody understands, does not count people who've been with us less than a year, because it's not fair to bring on a new advisor and takes them a year, maybe it takes them a year to get out of their non-compete before they can start to add revenue. And so our formula, from the total number of employees, it's in the 60s based on people who are actually here for less than, for more than a year. We're not counting interns. So John's got a formula as he's calculating it. So the numbers aren't necessarily as important as the strategy. The strategy is we want to have vertical growth. The reason we exited the pension business is because the revenue per employee was not going to hit the same targets that the private client is. It's a different business that we think our intellectual capital and our financial capital is better spent going vertically in the private client business than it was in trying to be all things to all people and try to also be in the pension business. So that's consistent with this goal of moving that direction. The reason that we've organized around different segments of family wealth and wealth management and financial advisory is so that we can get our advisors a steady diet of the same type of client so they can be more productive. The reason that we've invested in technology is so that our advisors can be more productive. And we think when all those benefits come through, plus the benefits of the LJPR merger, because we only have one CCO, we used to have two. LJPR and Sequoia both used to have one, now we have one. We used to have two CFOs, now we have one. We used to have two CIOs, now we have one. So a lot of this is baked in. So it's on our management team to not let that go. It's to not just say, okay, now we've got it, now we can just start hiring more people that we don't need. It's making sure on the CIO part, Chris and I have talked about this a lot, we don't need to have a lot of other asset management programs. How can we do the work of two CIOs in one? It's if we don't add a lot new programs. We don't have to create lots of new programs to manage assets. We think the ones we have are quite good. And we're going to merge all the great ideas from LJPR with all the great ideas from Sequoia and have one model portfolio. We don't have to have two model portfolios. If we have one model portfolio across a bigger asset base, our revenue per employee goes up. We think the revenue per employee is a simple measurement that everybody can track. And as Trevor and Ryan and John kind of finish through some of the stuff on Salesforce, all of you will get dashboards and you'll be able to track how we're doing on that. If we're not doing well enough, you guys can ask questions. You can ask questions in staff meeting, you can ask questions on town hall meetings on what we're doing along that path. Raise net income to 28% of revenue by capturing scale benefits. 1 and 2 are somewhat the same, right? If you raise the numbers on 1, it drives number 2. But again, it is keeping the discipline of not taking the scale benefits that we have with LJPR, taking the scale benefits of the technology investments that we've already made that are now starting to show fruit, and making sure you stay disciplined on that. Present KPI dashboards for all, and that'll be something that essentially Ryan is the guru at putting all these dashboards in everybody's inbox, but tracking so that everybody in the firm can see what our net new assets are, what our percentage of clients with up-to-date plans are, what our net new households per segment are, the percent of clients who are on the model, the percent of clients who engage with Tamarac portal. So as an example, the percent of clients who are on the model, it's infinitely easier to manage portfolios on the model than it is to manage custom models. So as we drive more people to the model, the amount of time that asset management group needs to assist with individual client situations goes down, and they can take that time dividend and they can reinvest it into improving the models, improving the positions in the models, and doing more research on the asset allocations associated with that. So we think that, again, this is aligning everyone around goals that we want to make sure that all of you can hold us accountable to and will make us more productive. And then expand the breadth and plan offering, ease of data gathering, and options for delivery. Heather's asking me about that already. But what we have a certain number of plan offerings now. We want more people, the percent of clients with up-to-date plans. We want to track that number and we want to improve it. Because we know the more people with up-to-date plans, the happier our clients are, the deeper our client engagements are, and the stickier they are long-term. So in order to do that, we may need more than 3 plans. We may need 5 plans or 7 plans. And we may need to hire more people in the planning department to handle components of those different levels. But we believe that that investment of 1 or 2 or 3 people, depending on what it is, will leverage across increasingly large advisor base. So that advisor base is in the 30s now as far as advisors, and there's some of us that are quasi-executives and quasi-advisors, so that number is a little squishy, but there's 35 people that are meeting with clients and talking with them about their plans. As that number becomes 45 or 55, we want to be able to have a diverse lineup of plans. We want to make it easier for them to give us data so that they can go through that process faster, so that we don't have to have a planning team that inputs everything. And we want to make it easier for us to deliver plans. Because in John's group, maybe some of those plans don't need to be an advisor driving out to their home and sitting at their kitchen table and laying out their plan. Maybe it needs to be done interactively. Maybe there's no reason to have a face-to-face meeting for some of those plans. And so we want to challenge ourselves to think about how we can engage more people in the planning process, because we know that the end result of that is very positive for the long-term value creation in the business. Third one is technology. We believe that, I wouldn't say that we're far ahead of everybody else, right? No one else has even thought about digital technology, right? It's everywhere. People have thought about it, so I'm not trying to make it sound like this is something new that no one else has gotten to. But we are at the forefront of making these investments and leveraging them across the organization. And as Trevor and I talked about goals for next year, the number one thing, if we can only have one goal, it would be train the heck out of everybody here on what we got. We have an amazing technology suite, and it is a very diverse group in this room, very diverse group outside that understands at different levels how to use it. We want to make sure that we double down on training and that we make sure that people understand the key benefits that are out there. So we've come up with this idea of 3 to 5 accelerator applications, or the most important applications that Al thinks his wealth management team needs, or that Annie thinks her family wealth team needs, or Chrissy thinks her operations team and CSAs need. And they're going to define those. So Chrissy's going to tell Trevor, Trevor's going to beat her up and say, no, I want these different ones. And they're going to agree on what the 3 to 5 most important applications are for each one of those segments. And then we're going to train the heck out of it. And we're going to require 100% of the people in Chrissy's team to earn their badges on those 3 to 5. So they can earn more badges. They can earn 30 if they want, and we can reward that and think that's a good idea. But if Trevor and Chrissy spend a lot of time making sure that the 3 to 5 most important ones are trained, or that they've identified them, number one, and then we require everybody to get training in it, we think we'll accelerate our speed into the future. The technology is there. We're not using all of it, and I don't mean that negatively. It's just a lot more technology, a lot more power than what we can get to in 1 year. So we want to double down on the training. We want to make Al sit down and say, what are the most important things that I need Scott Berry in Michigan to understand, that Jeff Robneck needs to understand, that I need to understand as a wealth management advisor. And so we all need to make sure that we commit to doing the training and that everybody, 100% of the team is on board associated with that. That 100% acceptance rate of a minimum training will be a firm-wide goal. So everybody's going to lay that out. We're either going to hit 100% and we're going to have one big party and one big economic reward, or no one's going to get the party and no one's going to get the economic reward. It is the single most important goal that we can lay out next year. If we can accomplish that, we will all be more productive and well positioned towards the future. So that is our number one thing. We're also going to accurately report client load capacity on a daily dashboard. So, Al wants to know how many clients Kristen is handling. We'll all be able to see that. We understand that if Kristen's handling 60 and Dave Massari is handling 60, they could be entirely different, right? And he could have the easy 60 or she could have the easy 60. So we're going to start to work on shades of gray within those 60. But right now, the first step is making sure that everybody knows that Kristen has 60 and beginning to put that capacity load so that we can find capacity that's sitting there. There's capacity within the organization that some of us don't know about, and making sure that that stays top of mind. Integrate all major platforms with a single sign-on. That excludes eMoney because they're difficult, Trevor tells me. But we should be able to log into Salesforce and see Schwab information, Fidelity information, all in one single sign-on. That will be pass-fail. Either you'll be able to do it or you won't, and Trevor will have economic and growth rewards associated with making that happen. Track and measure digital productivity, advisor benefits, track and measure digital client benefits. So the next phase is the advisor benefits and the client benefits. Trevor and I have talked about different ways to measure that. Quite frankly, we don't have measurements there, so I'll say those are a little bit squishy. We're talking through where we get to those, but we know that the next frontier is getting clients engaged. In some of the marketing goals, you'll see getting clients engaged with the portal. The Tamarack portal, as an example, is something we think we can use to deliver more information. But for right now, that's the next frontier. All right, we're almost done. 4, growth. Grow the firm. Our goal is to grow $3 million of new revenues. That's new signed contracts. That's not dollars in the door, right? So we'll close some in, every month of the year, hopefully. Some will be in December, and we won't collect all that money, but we'll have $3 million of new contracts. Create a growth process plan for all front-facing employees. That's predominantly on Leon's plate. So Leon's thinking about how he's going to help John, close more business. So he's going to understand what markets John is interested in, what markets John works in, and the types of clients he wants to see. And his team, his growth team, his marketing team will be helping support John by giving them information that will be helpful to John to deliver to his clients. We're going to recruit 4 new advisors to existing distribution channels, to your point, Chrissy. Our existing distribution channels are Cohen, as everybody knows, and I would say within Northeast Ohio, we probably have room for 1 or 2 new advisors. Within their other geographic areas, which would include Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Chicago, Milwaukee, and New York. New York, not so much, but they actually have an office there, so I'll list it. We probably have room for 1 more advisor. We have an existing relationship with Schwab. Schwab is it's called the Advisor Network. That Advisor Network has an interest in our advisors in Ohio and in Michigan. So we probably have a need for 1 or 2. And there could be reasons that in Michigan, as an example, we use an existing advisor, and that then opens up an opportunity for us in our current book to add another advisor. So maybe we'll take an advisor from Michigan and put them into SAN and then replace them, or maybe we'll hire someone from the outside and put them in there. But I'm just saying at this point, we probably need 2 within the SAN network. We are being considered for joining the Fidelity network. Theirs is called WAS. If we're accepted into WAS, we probably have a need for 3. So 1 in Michigan, 1 in Ohio, and 1 in Florida. The 1 in Florida would work along with Chris's team, so it'd be kind of consistent, and they could use some of their existing advisors and move them into that channel and add another one for their existing work, or they could add someone brand new. So those are really kind of the Cohen is our biggest distribution channel for organic growth. The Custodians is our second biggest distribution channel. And our third biggest distribution channel is kind of the private business owner network that we work with. And so we probably have room for another advisor within that, working with business owners thinking about long-term capitalization. So those are kind of where we would put those advisors. So you add that up, that's more than 4. There is a economic reality. Advisors are expensive. Usually you have to get them out of somewhere where they already are. So there's sometimes a economic cost to getting them to move. There's an economic cost to transitioning them because we always honor all the non-competes. And so if they are not allowed to bring their clients with them, then we don't try to take those clients. So there's a ramp-up period. If they are bringing their clients with them, there's usually an economic payment either to the old firm or to the advisor as that's coming over. So there's four seems like the right amount of capital outlay, integration outlay, and achievable goal, right? I think it will be, I'm not going to say easy, but I think it's doable to get 2. It's challenging to get 3. 4 is a stretch goal, but I think it's worthy of us pursuing it because we have the opportunities, and quite frankly, those opportunities won't last forever. At some point, if we don't take them, someone else will, and so I think it's important for us to execute on that. The important point to get across is that we're going to continue to look for opportunities to gain scale through M&A. We probably want firms that are $5 to $10 million of revenue, and that's how that bottom goal was brought up. And when you go out and look for those kinds of firms, you generally find individual advisors as well, and some of them may be separate M&A activity, or some of them may be advisors. Kevin likes to get credit for both, so we put him on there as 2 separate ones. So that's so as far as the total, if we executed on all of that, it won't all roll in this year, but our run rate next year would be 31.
Let's do it.
Okay, all right. Any other questions about that? And while that may seem like a big growth rate, it's lower than our historical growth rate, but I think you have to separate the two. The organic growth rate is consistent with our past. The M&A growth rate is actually, when you think about it, we're pretty much a $15 million revenue base on 6.5 was LJPR. So from a growth rate standpoint, that was fairly heady as well. So 7 on 24, depending on what number you look at, would actually be a little lower than that. But these numbers are hard to get exact. It's more meant to be directional. We want to continue to find a firm or year that we think can continue to expand our scale. And we think that's increasingly going to be part of our talent strategy. The number of individual advisors that are sitting at Merrill Lynch or Bank of America or Goldman Sachs or banks waiting for us to find them is dwindling. I think strategically we all know the demographics of the end client, baby boomers and kind of the transition and thinking they're advisors. I was thinking this when John and I were talking today with John Osborne. John Osborne's been a client for 18 years. If we didn't get him 18 years ago, we're not going to get him now. He's not going to change. And so all of these clients that are making decisions in their 50s and 60s, they're going to make a decision and keep that decision if we do our job right for 20 years. And so it's important that we have those advisors. In addition, all the people who are my age and Leon's age, who have firms that they have to decide how the long-term succession is going to go, they're going to make decisions in the next 5 or 10 years. And they're going to merge up with other firms. They're going to merge laterally with other firms. They're going to make decisions about how they get their scale and long-term stability and durability. Once those decisions are made, and there's plenty of statistics out there about the number of people who are my age or Leon's age who have to make these decisions, once they make them, they're not going to make them again for 20 years. So we need to be active in the marketplace now because based on the demographics of baby boomers, they're driving a lot of these decisions. They're going to make these decisions now, and we need to capture them now and then hopefully keep them over the next 20 years. We're going to continue to invest and press our advantage of having Kevin. We made the investment in Kevin in 2009. There aren't people who have 9 years of experience in M&A actively looking in it. And I don't even know if Kevin, are you on the phone? I know he's in Florida. I just didn't know if he's calling in. It's good that he's not on the phone. I can make fun of him. He's not. He's not an investment banker. He'd be the first to tell you he's not. Not going to go work for Houlihan Lokey or Goldman Sachs as an investment banker. But he's done 6 deals. There aren't 10 people in the industry, and I'm only saying this so you guys all understand it. There aren't 10 people in the industry that have done 6 deals. So he's got, if nothing else, just a lot of firsthand experience. We've all spent a lot of money to train him to do that. He's made mistakes. He's learned from them. We've gotten better with each deal that we do. And we'd be crazy not to double down and reinvest in him doing more of that, right? So each deal that we do, he does more and I do less. So the team together, between the two of us, continuing to look for, find, integrate, will get better. Trevor and Sean will get better from a technology standpoint. When I say better, it's not that I think they're doing bad. It's just they'll learn from each transaction, and Kevin will be less involved in technology. So next time he won't even have to do anything with that. When you go back to the first one, it was like trying to create a list to get everybody to be able to work on those things. So we think we have a competitive advantage. Doing 6 deals puts us in the top 20 firms in the industry. Remember, there's 16,000 RIA firms. There are not 20 firms that have done 6 deals in the last 9 years. And there's not 10 people who are in the same job who have done 6 deals in the last 9 years. So that's an advantage that we think is unique and we want to press. So from a growth standpoint, I think I always think of Dave Massari. Dave, he was with us in insurance. We all knew he had skills, but without the insurance group building out to being a $5 million division, there was only so far he could take it. He could support $1 million of production or $500,000 worth of production that Tom would do. Tom is one of the better insurance agents in the area and does a significant amount of production, but there's only so far you can go with that. So Dave got really good at supporting Tom, and ultimately he was looking for more out of his career. If we put him into an advisory role, working with clients and supporting a number of us and working in client engagements, we had a certain amount of clients that we could have him working on, but if we don't grow the firm, we can't create more opportunities for him. A good servicing advisor probably works with 50 to 100 clients, and we need to find 50 to 100. So if we don't grow, we didn't have them when he decided he wanted to leave insurance and be as part of a servicing advisor, so we had to go find them. So as we go find them, it creates opportunities for him to step out of insurance, which was I don't say dead end in a bad way, I just mean there was only so far he could take it. We all know that we weren't going to be a $5 million insurance organization, so he wasn't going to get to kind of tax himself to be able to scale up beyond that. So he steps into the servicing advisor role. If we don't add more clients, we can't fill him up, we can't keep him satisfied, we can't keep him here long term. So we started filling him up. We filled him up with maybe less than perfect clients because Dave's skill set was above the level of clients that he could work with. So RAV gives us an opportunity to give him a chance to move to Beechwood and take over a bunch of clients. That's hard, right? Because they've been working with Bob and Dave for 30, 40 years. They love Bob and Dave. And it's time for Bob and Dave to get their chance to step away and retire and move on and do other things. And so Dave gets thrown into the fire and he has to step up and grow. So he does it. So he gets more career growth. He has more responsibility. He's a better advisor because he was left somewhat in the woods to go, deal with these people who loved Bob for 40 years, and now he has to take them over. And so it helps Dave grow from that standpoint. Now with Al and Jeff working with him, Dave has a skill set to be able to work with clients with $5 million. So he needs to be able to exit certain relationships where clients have less complex problems and move to certain relationships where clients have more complex problems. And if we don't create a steady diet of those types of clients, then ultimately we'll stymie Dave's growth and we won't be able to keep Dave. So I think that growth creates opportunity, career advancement. The best people want career advancement. So even no matter what client is working with what advisor, they want the best person. So client A wants to work with a great advisor. The only way to get great advisors is to have people who are really excited about growing their intellect, growing their capabilities, and growing their ability to deliver an exceptional client experience. And in order to do that, we have to continue to give them change and opportunity, and growth, I think, does that. All right, so the last major goal is quality and client experience. We're going to, and this is going to be John and Ryan working on this. We're going to implement, measure, and benchmark a rolling NPS. So we're essentially going to, through Salesforce and implementation with Salesforce, and Megan will probably help as well, is on a rolling basis, and our goal is to finish this by the end of the first quarter, so we'll start in the second quarter. We'll send out to 30 people an NPS survey, and we'll get a score. And then next month we'll send out to 30 more people, and next month we'll send out to 30 more people. So over the next First quarter will take us a while to get up. After that, over 12 months, we'll start to have 300 people who've responded or 400 people who've responded. And they're still working on the numbers that they're going to put through. But we'll start to have real data, and we'll be able to track because we believe that Net Promoter Score is a good way to track client satisfaction. We'll begin to understand and track clients are more happy working with Annie than they are working with me. We'll track all of that in Salesforce. We all know that to be the case, but we'll be able to prove it now. Are clients more happy working with the team of Annie and Kevin or Annie and Taylor? Are clients more happy that pay us $50,000 or clients that pay us $5,000? Are clients more happy when they have a plan or when they don't have a plan? And so the data that we can now track through Salesforce, we're going to start to gather. So keeping the NPS scores the first time we do it won't be very meaningful, but if we do it consistently for the next 24 months, we're going to start to have data that we can use to help Al and Jeff and John and Annie put advisors together in pairs to work with clients that fit their objectives. And we think that's the single best way for us to track our quality. We all want great quality. We all want happy clients, but how do you figure out if you have them? You can ask people when they come in. That's somewhat difficult to scale. It's difficult to get good client information. And so we think we want to consistently ask. And this NPS score, because it's not a 32-page questionnaire, is a very simple way for clients to give you feedback. We may do it for 12 months and find out that nobody wants to answer us and we have to come up with something else, but we're going to do it for the next 12 months. It's going to take us 3 months to get there, so 15 months before we would stop if we find out that nobody wants to answer us. But I think they want to answer us. What's happened in the past is it's been this monstrous undertaking that Sean had to go through, and it took forever, and it was like, gosh, I don't want to do, like putting up the Christmas tree. I don't want to do that again. They don't really want to go through the work it takes to get it out. And so we haven't done it as frequently as we want. With Salesforce, Pardot, and some other systems, we have the ability to now automate it and send it out on a regular basis and begin to track some of the data. We're going to track and measure tactical and strategic contacts for each client then. So Leon has got a set of objectives on how many client contacts he wants John's team to have, how many client contacts he wants Annie's team to have. He's going to reconcile that with Annie, and he's going to say Annie's clients need fewer contacts, but they need more strategic contact. John's clients may need more contacts, but they need less strategic contact, or they don't need to understand about opportunity zones. They need to understand about Social Security. So Leon's team is going to sync up with the segment managers, the family wealth, wealth management, and financial advisory, and deliver content and measure that content. And then we're going to have a score based on how much content we deliver to clients, because we believe the more we communicate with those clients, the happier they'll be. So quality and client experience is the fifth. So that's our top 5 objectives. So everybody in this room is going to then work on cascading down your team with your team. So understanding that the firm wants to focus on these 5 things, what's your part, Trevor, to helping the firm on these 5 objectives? And I think this will be helpful in getting everyone aligned towards the same long-term vision. So again, on the 13th of February, we'll share this with everyone. We'll share the organizational chart, which will show some of the reorgs, the promotions. We won't announce promotions on the 13th, but people can read that and figure out that certain people are in new boxes and likely are getting promoted. We'll have reviews, meetings with managers throughout the month of February. We'll have state of the firm and planning in March. I encourage all of you, I don't just encourage you, all have the responsibility for telling me as you're meeting with your people, if they're saying, hey, I heard all this, but I don't understand this, or I don't understand this, or this worries me, or this excites me. I'd love to hear that so I can factor that into the state of the firm and make sure that we're responsive to what the organization is interested in hearing about.